Thank you so much, Dale, for that wonderful intro. I just wanted to share how excited I am by being in this room with all of you as the next generation of sort of caretakers for sustainable practice in the arts. It's so lovely to see you tonight. So my name is Reina Takeuchi, and I would like to acknowledge that this conversation and this event is taking place on Gadigal land, part of the Eora Nation, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the transgenerational connections between traditional owners, earth, water, and culture. So I wanted to begin this discussion tonight by introducing one of the first projects that I worked on during my time at 4A, which was One Soul Wara, One Salt Water, curated by Michaela Tai and Jose de Silva. Which I think really exemplifies the themes of sustainable curating and carbon neutrality in museum practice. So One Soul Wara is a pidgin word from the Solomon Islands meaning one salt water, or one ocean, one people, which encapsulates the idea that there is a single connected waterscape that holds distinct and diverse cultures and communities together. 4A's presentation of One Soul Wara was complemented by bodies of work exhibited at UNSW galleries, a suite of which was curated by Leili Ishrangi, and the works elucidate the complex and multifaceted contemporary artistic practices and knowledge systems of the Great Ocean. So what you can see above me is the artwork from Samoan artist Paula Schaffhausen, who exhibited as part of this project. And I had the opportunity to work with her in collecting fragments from Sydney's beaches, beach debris around these oceans. And together we would bring them back to the studio and create these sculptured figures of Tagaloa, the Polynesian god of creation and creator of the ocean. So these works were made of coconut oil, and my role was to assist her in creating these forms and filling them up with coconut oil and allowing them to set in a refrigerator. So what you can see above me is a combination of all the beach debris and rubbish that we would find along the coastline, and during the exhibition, probably within the first 12 days actually, since this exhibition was in summer, they melted down. So the work is this poetic response to the realities of climate change, global warming, and rising sea levels. And after this particular project, I took on a more hands-on role with the Climate Active Initiative, which focuses on carbon neutrality. So 4A has been certified carbon neutral by the Climate Active Carbon Neutral Standard since 2019, and as a founding member of the Climate Active Network, 4A is the second arts organisation in New South Wales to be certified, along with the Sydney Opera House. And at this point, we're the only certified arts organisations in Australia with this certification. So the groundwork for this certification included measuring our annual carbon footprint, reducing our energy consumption and emissions, and offsetting the remaining energy and emissions, and becoming carbon neutral with the NCOS certification. So a huge part of what we looked into as part of our contributors to emissions, which included large-scale freight and flights for international programming, but this also included counting how many chickens overall in the organisation we eat, and whether we cater wholly vegetarian for certain events. Interestingly enough, since I've recorded our data for the past couple of years, during this COVID era, our emissions have gone down significantly, which was indicative of potentially how much we could change in terms of our consumption. As you can see on this, on the next slide actually, we were actually able to reduce our emissions to 1/5 of the emissions that we created in 2019. And a lot of the groundwork for this certification was examining who our energy providers were and who our waste providers are, and how we can maximize sustainability with our providers within the organization. So as you can see above me, you can see the changes that took place. And in 2021, the emissions went up to close to double, unfortunately. However, this was still significantly lower than when we began this project in 2018, which was our base year. We're still aiming to reduce and seeing how much is possible, and there's a general questioning within the organization. How do we mediate the changes that have emerged post the COVID-19 pandemic we've embarked on, and how we've been enforced to create changes since the global lockdowns? So we currently offset through 2 different organizations, and this is with the help of our consultant, Pangolin Associates, who allows us to, once we've done the groundwork for the data collating, actually allows us to offset through different projects. So originally our projects were actually quite geographically far from us, but as of last year we've had more and more conversations about how Australia and the Asia Pacific are some of the most affected regions by climate change, and also where our communities of artists are primarily located. So we've been primarily offsetting for the past year through Aboriginal Carbon Foundation and an independent project in Papua New Guinea called NIHT Tapayo Red Project. Both of these projects focus on reforestation and also looking at generating conversations within the communities around carbon farming. And we've really been advocating for these spaces to try and see what we can see generate within the community. And I guess what I'd like to bring up here is that when I'm speaking to the benefits of offsetting and being carbon neutral certified, but it actually needs to include some sort of clear changes. And what became clear through conversations within the organization is that it's all well and good to offset, but potentially we need to bring to the fore what actually needs to change about the way we have been implementing actions and solutions within institution and curatorial frameworks. So this takes me to the heart of this presentation: sustainable curating and ongoing conversations in this space. This information, which I think is more at the sort of center of what we as emerging and mid-career to established arts workers who are gathering here, we really want to be talking about this from here into the future, the possibilities of sustainable curating, producing, and ongoing conversations within the community. So I've pulled up a couple of images here from some initiatives that are happening internationally, which include CIMARM's Environmental Sustainability in Museum Practice Toolkit and Museums for Climate Action, both of which provide some incredible resources on how we can actually initiate dialogue within institutional frameworks. And I particularly love how Museums for Climate Action divide up, rethink, reimagine, and mobilize. And as our artistic director, Amrit Gill, has said, Australia and Asia Pacific are some of the hardest hit regions by climate change, and also where our communities of artists and audiences are located. Foray is committed to advocating and amplifying the profile and voices of these communities through our programs. Our climate responsible practices are a part of that mission. So Foray has actually implemented a clause in artist agreements now, which focuses on holding artists to be accountable for climate actions. And this isn't necessarily to say that artists who aren't working in these spaces are barred from working with us, but it's a stepping stone for provoking these conversations and from the beginning, and kind of beginning that conversation around the environmental impacts of the exhibition and mitigating that impact from the beginning. It's really a matter of creating radical pedagogy, or bringing to the fore that you who are participating in this conversation and discussion now are a part of the next generation of curators, artists, researchers, and arts workers who have the opportunity to radicalize the nature of exhibition making and bring to the fore things that may have not been seen in the Australian spaces. Obviously, creating a discourse on curating, producing, and laying open those ways of operating does not actually make these power structures disappear, but it does make them discussable and thus subject for critique and change. Spaces like the Centre of Sustainable Curating in Canada are currently developing and looking at where does the environmental toll begin, and where do we begin to tally the issue that's taking place? Is it possible to create a zero carbon exhibition? And to end off this conversation, I would like to bring up this quote from Layla Stevens, who's an Indonesian-Australian artist, from her essay for Woven Collective's latest curatorial project. If you don't know their work, I definitely recommend researching it. You can come and find me later and talk to me. We formulated that the notion of a cascade runs as a shared source in our work, a way of thinking that draws from ancestral and lived mythologies. Equally, it spoke to generative practices of care, exchange, and learning. Just as water cascades from one point to another, we build on what came before, and who has taught us and passed down. Thank you so much.